of things you can do with your phone that are not always intuitive and obvious to you to make sure you get all the features that you need or want. So we're going to go through them. So now, receiving a phone call. It looks a little bit differently when you have your phone locked or when you're using your phone. When the phone is locked and it starts ringing. Now let's stop here and talk about the little button on the side of the phone. This little button will show red next to it if it is pushed to the back. And the little red that shows, or it looks orange to me, but they say it's red, turns off the ringer. That means people will not hear, in my case, when the phone rings, it plays music. In your case, it may be anything from a duck to an old phone ringing, however you set up the sounds. Yes. If this is pushed forward and now there's no red and it will ring, pushed back, it won't ring. You can set them and they're by default, they'll vibrate. If you can go in settings and you can tell it I don't want it to vibrate. But if you turn off the ringer and don't have it vibrate, you may never know you have a phone call. So you need to decide. With guys, it's easier because we tend to put our phones in our pocket and we can feel the vibration. Therefore, this is almost always turned off for me. The way I'll miss a phone call is I'm at home and I put it on the counter. And if it's on a hard counter, I can still hear it vibrate. But if you throw it on the couch, you won't hear that. And so in your purse, if it's next to something very hard, you may hear it. If it's next to something soft, you won't hear it. So you have to decide how you're going to do it. So now, when the phone is locked and it starts to ring, you pick it up and look at it. This is what you will see. There is just a slider to answer. Now, if I slide that, I'll answer the phone. But you have a couple other options. One is remind me, and one is messages. So remind me, so the phone is ringing, but you don't want to answer it. You've looked at it, it'll tell you the phone number or the person. If the person's if that phone number is in your contact list, it'll show the name. If that person is not on your contact list, it'll simply have a phone number down there. And depending on your provider, it may say things like scam likely. It may tell you that it's from Massachusetts. It may tell you it's from Springfield, Massachusetts. It depends on their phone, your phone, and whatever the coding is. Spammers tend to fake the location, so it won't really be where they are. They try to think it's a local call. If you ever get a phone call from Mendon, California, it's up in the San Joaquin Valley, I guarantee it's a scammer. It's a very small town, and they make more phone calls out of Mendon than just about anywhere else, and that's because there's a couple of people there who make millions of calls daily trying to get you to answer. We'll get to the voicemail in a little bit, but I want to at least show you this. I got this yesterday. If you want, I'll read it. This is something, your Social Security number on an immediate basis to receive suspicious trails of information in your name, et cetera, call here, or we'll have to put out a warrant for your arrest. Now, this I've received 3 times in the last 4 days.
Why didn't you block it?
I did. Now. I blocked it and it came through on a different phone number. So just because you block a phone doesn't mean you're stopping it.
But you
So beware of this kind of stuff. Nobody ever calls you to tell you you got to call back or you'll be arrested. No one's going to put you in for collections for taxes on a phone call if you don't call back. Don't call back. Right. Okay, so now this one has remind me as the option on the left. If you tap that, these are your options. Remind me later, and then when I leave, which is get out of the area you're in, the phone knows where you are, you get out a certain distance and then it'll tell you. So if you're here and you get a call and you look and you want to know, if you say when I leave, so when you get out of here a certain distance, there'll be a reminder on your phone to tell you. So that's one option. In 1 hour, when I get home, etc.
Will you hear the phone message?
If you have, no, there's no message. If you've got reminders set up, it will be in there. There'll be a message notification. You have to tell your phone that you want to be notified things from your phone. There's phone settings, notification settings for all kinds of apps. If you've got them all turned off, you won't get any notifications. Okay, so those are your three options, and then cancel, you don't want any of the above. The one on the right, messages, if you press on that, you will get another screen, and this will send a text message to the person that called you. So this is set up, I'll call you later, I'm on my way. There's another one that's a default one. I don't know what it is. I put this on, I'm in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, I'll call you back when I can. That you can custom change any of these in settings. The last one is custom, that means you're going to type in a message right then and there. Let's go to settings. And I think it's in phone. Call waiting, respond with text. And then these are the defaults. Sorry, I can't talk right now, I'm on my way, can I call you later? You press on any of those and you can change it to what you want. So that's a convenient way of getting rid of the call quickly, but at least showing that you're going to respond. Now, if you get a phone call from a landline, is this going to work? No, because landlines don't do text. So sending a text to a landline, it goes out and it's in oblivion, and it'll never get there. So if you get a call from your doctor's office, don't respond with a text, it won't work. You will have to do another method or ignore the call. When the phone is unlocked, it looks different when it rings. It gives you the same information here, but it's different down here. Here you have an opportunity to accept or decline. If the phone is locked, or at any time, and the phone rings and I don't want to answer it, what do? I'm back here when the phone is locked, and I just want to end and I want to shut the phone up because I forgot to put it on silence mode, and it's ringing with the William Tell Overture or whatever you've got for a ringtone.
Hit the side button?
Hit the sleep awake button. On your phone, it's on the side. On some phones, older phones, it's on the top. If you press it once, the ringing stops, but the call is still there. So if Ari gets a phone call and he looks at it and he really wants to take this call, if he presses this once, the phone call is still there, but it's not ringing. He now has up to 20 to 30 seconds to get out the door, and so he can start talking to the person. So press it once and it just makes it quiet. That's how long it takes to a phone call to go over to voicemail, is 20 to 30 seconds. If you press it twice, click, click, it goes right to voicemail. So that's a case where you just want to get to voicemail, you're not going to get up, you're not going to go out there, you just want to get rid of the call quickly. So twice sends it to voicemail now, once just makes it quiet, and if you don't answer, it will go to voicemail. There should be that instruction on bold on the top of these when you get them, but they don't. And so people, you can just look at a panic in the audience when someone's phone is ringing. They have no idea what to do. But that's what to do. So now let's go back here. If you are on the phone, it's unlocked, and you put decline, it'll send them to voicemail. If you accept it, you'll pick up the phone call. Okay, now, let's look at the phone app. So you all know what the phone app looks like. So I have to find out where I have the phone app. There it is. I have it on the dock. All right, so if you go into that, you have the phone app. So let me go over to this and explain that. Okay, there are 5 different options you have when you are on the phone app: favorites, recent, contacts, keypad, and voicemail. And those are these at the bottom. So the first one is favorites, recents, contacts, keypad, and voicemail. Keypad is if you actually want to physically dial a phone number. How many have done that in the last week? You have. Most people don't seem to punch in the numbers anymore. You can, but usually once you've used your phone for a while, the phone number's on there. So you can use Siri to call. So I could say, hey, Shirley, call Ari. And Ari's name is in my contact list, and it may ask me which phone number, if I've got a work number, a home number, a cell number, or I can say, hey, Shirley. I always get nervous about getting the attention of these things. Call Ari's work number, and then it'll go there. So you can, if you're in the contact list, then that's a very convenient way of dialing. I almost never punch in numbers anymore. Okay, let's talk about placing a phone call. You can place a phone call from any of those 5 options. And here is the first option, favorites. And favorites, you can add a person in your favorites, and they are on your list. This is like the old, when the old cell phone, the old phones for home where you had like 5 options for speed dialing. Remember the term, speed dialing? But you can set up these here, and you hit the plus, and then you go through the process of adding someone. And it goes to the contact list, and you select, I want this. You have to have one line for each phone number. So if there's a home number and a mobile number, and you want them both on your favorites, you've got to add that person twice. All right, so now all I have to do is in favorites, I just tap on one of these, and the phone call will be placed. So I've put certain people that, even though it says Bart, that's my sister, and my daughter, my son, Joanne. So those are the only ones I have on there. So favorites is one place you can go to make a phone call. Now I'm going to show you some, once the phone call is started, there is a lynda.com tutorial where the person has gone through all these steps. So instead of doing more screenshots, I just stole them from him. And so I do not know who Carlos is, but this is in his example. So I have now called Carlos. Carlos is may or may not have answered at this point, but this is the screen that shows up when I call him. When he does, the button up here now says mute. If I press on that button, then, and it'll highlight, anything I say, Carlos will not hear. If I take that off, he can. You have to be aware of that, because if you go from the phone and go over to look up something in weather or whatever, your phone is no longer, I mean, it's still listening. So be careful what you say, because the person can hear you, unless you press the mute button and then go over. So if you need to ask a question for someone in the room, you can press mute, ask the question, make all your comments about Carlos you want, and then come back. Okay, this one is the keypad, and you press that, you can get the number. So if you call a work number and it says, if you know the person's extension, you can enter it now. You press the keypad, and now you can enter 201, whatever that person's extension. The speaker, when you press that, it goes on speakerphone, so that you and the person sitting next to you can both listen and talk on the conversation. FaceTime, you can switch this to a FaceTime call. Before we get ahead of ourselves with FaceTime, I'll just say that is a call over the internet, either audio or video. Audio or video. And we'll get to that as we go along. If you are on the phone talking to Carlos, and Carlos wants to know the phone number of somebody, where something is, some information from you, and you need to use the internet or you need to use your phone to find it. If you press the home button, or if you're on a phone that doesn't have a home button and you put your finger underneath the screen and draw it up, it'll bring up your home screen. At that point, it looks like this. You have a green bar at the top. That is there to say, hey, you know that you're on a phone call? Otherwise, it's easy enough to get distracted, and if the person's not saying anything, you don't know. And it doesn't automatically transfer to speaker, so you may not be able to hear him very well, but if you're talking and the microphone picks it up, they can hear you. To go back, you simply press the green bar. But in this case, Carlos wanted to know about the gondola folks down in Newport Beach. So I went to Safari and looked up Newport Beach gondola, and up it comes. By the way, they moved. They're still kind of there. They're in Newport Bay, but they're now behind the bridge, or by the bridge, towards Balboa Island. They're no longer at the base of Newport and PCH.
Okay.
You can look in contacts and roam all you want on your phone. It used to be Verizon didn't let you do this with a phone call, but they caught up years ago. So now it doesn't matter what carrier, they all work. You can be on the internet and talking at the same time. Yes?
In the previous slide, Carlos says he wants to know about Newport, whatever. And you go to your maps and you find it. Is there a way to transfer that to him?
You're on a phone call with him.
Okay.
You can go into here and let's say it's a phone number he wants. You can go in here, look up that one, and share it with them and send it on a text, send it on an email
Oh, while you're talking.
while you're talking.
I mean,
You can use your phone as well as talk at the same time. So it's really quite flexible. Okay, so you can look up contacts directly. You don't have to go to the home button and then try and find where your contact icon is somewhere. You can get to the contacts directly from the phone app. Okay, now we're going to be spending some time using this button here, which right now says add a call. But this is how to get into conferencing of more than one person. I'm talking to Carlos, and I want to add a call so that Carlos and someone else, let's say Ari, and I want to be on a phone call. This is where you do that. Okay, and they call it conferencing. So let's go, here's the same screen, and we're going to go in and add a call. Nope. The screen I have is when someone has called me while I'm talking to Carlos. All right? Who's panicked because that's happened? What do you do? Yeah. Okay. Here's what you do. You get the phone call and your screen changes to say that you've received another call. And here are your options. You got 3 options. The middle one is send to voicemail, and Barry, who just called in, is going to voicemail, and then you go right back to talking to Carlos and everything's okay. All right, that's the simplest way to deal with it. You put off the problem until later. Okay, there's another that is you end the call with Carlos and you get to Barry. So let's say Barry is calling you back because he's got tickets to this concert and you've been waiting for him to find out, and so you tell, sorry Carlos, I gotta go, and you press the end and accept the call. If you want to talk to them, you can press put Carlos on hold and accept the call from Barry. And this is the beginning of your conferencing, where you get to have more than one. You can talk to 5 other people at once. So now I have pressed the button. I've pressed the button, hold and accept, and this is what I get. Now it tells me Carlos is on hold, I'm talking to Barry, and if I press this merge call button, everyone talking to everybody else. So let's go to the next screen, and now this tells you Carlos and Barry, and if there's more than one other person, it'll start telling you up here that's many people. And if you tap up there, it'll tell you who those people are. And you notice this has gone back to add a call. So now everyone can talk to everybody else. But this is your phone call we're dealing with. So if Barry hangs up, you and Carlos are still there. If Carlos hangs up, you and Barry are still there. If you hang up, they're all gone. Carlos and Barry are not talking to each other. This is all through you.
That circle run, what does that do again?
It doesn't do anything. The circle is there because that's how to get to the next screen. Okay, so you're in charge because this is calls into or out from your phone. And now, if we press the I, you get to see all the people on the phone and all the detail. And there can be 5 of these on the phone with you. And at this point, you can end a call Or if you press private, you and that person that you press private, you're talking. The others cannot hear you. However, the others still can hear each other. So if you and Barry need to discuss something before, or agree to something before talking to Carlos, you can go private with Barry and then go back to talking to everybody. This changes from private. You press it again, you'll go back to that person.
Sir, if you're the instigator of the call,
Yeah.
you're in charge, so are you the only one that could do that private thing? Okay.
They cannot go into a private conversation between two of them. This is all coming through you. Now, once you get rid of these phone calls, you can hang up on them, or if you hang up altogether, they're gone. But you can hang up in individual people, or you can end the whole conversation. But if you end up with getting rid of all the others except for Carlos, you're still on the phone with Carlos. Okay, now, that's the whole subject of conferencing. And I think it requires playing. I think it requires you doing it once or twice before it happens where a very important person calls you while you're talking to another very important person. Then the panic wells up in you because you've not done it before. If it's something casual that a salesperson calls while you're in the other, it's very easy. You just send them a voicemail. Yeah.
Can you conference call through FaceTime?
Can you conference call to what?
FaceTime. Can you FaceTime?
Yes, you can do 32 of them. 32, because it's not on the phone system. FaceTime now allows group calls of up to 32. Why, I don't know. That's an absurd number, but you can. That's relatively new feature, I think only about a year old. Now, handoff. The Apple environment, they like to say ecosystem, Apple is trying to make it so you can use all your devices and interchange between them. So I get a phone call and my phone is in the living room, my computer is in the computer room, I'm in the garage, and my watch tells me there's a phone call. I can take the call on the watch, and I can then later on hand these off between any of these devices. So if you get the call and you're on your iPad, your phone is across the room, you can answer it on your iPad. Then, because this is not convenient for you, lugging this thing around, you can walk over, pick up your phone, and take over the phone call on your phone. The term that Apple uses is handoff. And so the phone's ringing. My house is insane when the phone goes off because my watch will go off, my phone will go off, my iPad will go off. One of the Macs might start clamoring for me to answer it too. So there can be a cacophony of sounds throughout the whole place. And by the way, I can answer the phone call from my HomePod too. So I have so many options. Now, once they're set up correctly, and we'll talk about how in a minute, all of these things lit up, you can answer the calls or reject the call from any of these. Obviously, all of these were awake when the call made because you can see there's the options there. One of them might show the swipe, which means it was asleep at the time. But when I did screenshots on these, they were all awake. Okay, now, I answered it on my iPad. And you can see I grayed out who the call came from. And I'm talking to the person on the phone, and it's on speakerphone. Now I get up, I walk across the room, I find my iPhone, and lo and behold, when I wake it up, it's got the green bar, which means there's a phone call there. I tap the green bar, and the phone takes over the phone conversation. So now I can just leave the iPad, the phone has got it. So you can hand off from the watch to the Mac, to the phone, to the iPad, any way you want. Here is a Mac screen, and I was working on a project, and my desktop does not look like that. It only has a few things over here. This is absurd. So this is not me, but this is when I made the screenshot. And I got a phone call from here, from Joanne, and I can accept it or decline it on my Mac. And then I can pick up my phone and pick it up from there on the handoff. So that's handoff. Now setting it up takes a little bit of effort. You turn Settings, General, Handoff on each device. Settings, General, and then Handoff. Let's go to Settings. General, and AirPlay and Handoff, and I've turned it on. This needs to be turned on all your devices that you want to use handoff. If you never want to answer the call on your iPad, don't turn it on. If you do, turn them on. And this needs to be on all the devices you want to participate in the handoff. They have to be on the same network. If you have your Mac on guests here and your iPhone on EduRoam here, handoff does not work. They're using Wi-Fi to allow you to talk between the phones and take the call over. So you have to be on the same network. Very few people have more than one network in their house, but it happens. If you have Spectrum and you have one area of the house that's very dicey, it may use the 2.5 megahertz, 2 point something megahertz, but if you're close to the router, you may be using the 5 megahertz. Those are different networks, and this won't work. So there are some quirks to this. You got to have all the devices have to have the same Apple ID. So Joanne's Apple ID and my Apple ID is different. So I cannot hand off a call to Joanne's phone. All right, so if you want to do a handoff, it has to be on the same Apple ID. On the phone, you have to turn on all desired devices in Settings, Phone, and Calls. So let's switch over. Remember, the phone is where this is controlling everything. Settings, Phone, what did I say? Settings, Phone, and Calls. Calls on other devices. And I go into there, and here are all the ones that I allow. I have one. This is the one where all my media is in, my movies, my TV shows I recorded, the photos. This is on a little Mac Mini server. I don't use it for anything else, so I don't have that turned on. The rest I do. Your watch is controlled by your phone separately. So here's how to turn this. Since the phone is in charge, it needs to know these. Once this is set, so the MacBook then has to have the handoff turned on. Then it'll work. As I said, this is quirky. Okay, you also, the one more in settings FaceTime, you have to turn it on. And why it's over in settings FaceTime, I don't know, but you do. So everyone's got that sheet, that page there, so you can go through with the list. Okay, now, we talked about that spam call that I got that said I was going to be arrested if I didn't call that number. And someone said, why didn't you block the call? And this is how you can block a call. After I get off that conversation, and here it is with a phone number. Why does this have a phone number and this have a name?
It's not in the contact.
Not in your contact.
It's not in my, this one is not in my contact list. This one is. So if I hit the information button on that, it brings up this screen. And I can create a new contact, I can share the contact, do all these, but I can also block that caller. So after you get off and do this immediately, you get a call from someone you just don't want to call you back. Don't forget, do this now. Press the I, go in and block that caller.
Do you have to do it right away?
What? No, but you won't remember to. And then you get another phone call from them and you go, ah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, you mentioned earlier that you got a phone call from this same person, and then you got the next one on a different line. And that's happened to me so many times, and I've got so many blocked calls. I silence, and that's down at the bottom, silence the unknown callers, and then I can look in my reasons, because that's where they show up, and then just delete them.
Yeah, yeah. Did you hear that? You can set silence and an unknown caller. That's a new feature where they will not ring if you don't know who that person is. That will make you miss some phone calls. But if you get plagued by these spam calls, you can do that. And the kids these days don't answer the phone anyway. They let it go to voicemail, and then you instantly get a return phone call from them. They're watching you when they call and they go, oh, okay. And then they call you back.
So
But they
where-
don't, they screen them. They do not answer the phone calls anymore. Yes.
Where is that?
Wait a minute, wait a minute.
Would you repeat how you got to that screen?
The I button. The I button.
Yeah, but how'd you get to that screen?
This is the recents, all my phone calls, recents.
Where's the I button on that screen?
There's no add button, there's the I over here, and this brings me over to this screen, and I can block the caller. Yeah,
Okay, now, further on with that idea of going back to them later, you didn't block them, you just left them in your reasons, you silenced them. You mentioned it will cause you to miss calls, but I answer calls if they left a phone message.
yes, you're screening the call.
Yeah.
That's,
But if they didn't leave the phone message, I delete it. If I get the same number back, I have to remember.
just like on landlines these days, nobody seems to answer the home phone. They wait till it goes to voicemail because 90% of the calls are junk calls. By the way, when you block the call, they don't know you blocked the call. It goes to voicemail, except that it doesn't go to voicemail. They think it is, and they will leave a voicemail message you will never receive.
On some text messages, it says, when you send a message, it will say delivered. And then other times, It doesn't,
It only knows it's delivered if they're on iMessage, they use messages. It doesn't know if it's a straight text call.
okay. So that's,
So if you're sending it to a Samsung, it goes through text and it does know it's delivered. But inside the network with Apple, they know when someone's picked up a call and it shows as delivered. Okay, we're in settings. Let's go to phone. And whoop, there is silence unknown callers. So that means it gets sent to voicemail and also gets displayed on your recent list. If you've got them in contacts, recent outgoing calls, and Siri suggestions, it also is not silenced. So if you accidentally return their phone call, then putting silence unknown callers won't work for them because you called them at one point. And you just have to let that eventually drift out of your system. So when you get a phone call, don't tap on it. That's one way to answer a phone call. Is to just tap on it. So if I pressed oh, Ari, you're not on this list.
Did I get on a different list?
But if I pressed on this, it would make a phone call to that number. Remember, you can make phone calls from any of these options down at the bottom. In this case, recents or voicemail. Actually, in voicemail, I will go to that one, and then if I press this, it'll make the phone call. If it's in recents, all I have to do is press one of these. Again, Ari, you're not on this list. So you can make favorites, you press that. Here you press any of these. Contacts, you go and find it. Keyboard, you do it. Voicemail, if you press on it, you're looking at the voicemail itself. And then if you press here, you can make a phone call. So phone call can be made from any of these screens. However you can find the person, you can make a return call.
How can you get your transcription?
You don't? On your phone, you don't?
Never tried.
If you go into voicemail and look, it should. If it doesn't, you have a problem with your carrier and you need to go to AT&T or Verizon or whatever. Tell them it's not working and fix it. Okay, now let's go into Do Not Disturb. Do Not Disturb is a feature that's probably 2-3 years old. And in your control panel, it has the little moon. And here it's off, and here it's on. So at any point, you go in and put your phone on Do Not Disturb. The little moon. By default, it is on at 10 o'clock at night and goes off at 7 a.m. Let's go into the settings. You can actually find it directly on the settings, and you can turn it on. It's scheduled by default for me 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. If you want, you can change that. If you're early to bed and early to rise, you need different numbers.
And healthy while alive.
Yeah. Your options are do not ring when a call comes in after that. Doesn't matter if you're reading a book on your iPad, iPhone, or when the iPhone is locked. Your choice of what you want. When you are on Do Not Disturb, your calls go to voicemail. They do not ring. So you can change this at any time. Now look down here. Allow calls. And these are set on favorites. Do you remember my favorites? It was Joanne, my son, my daughter, my sister. If they call me at 3 a.m., it will ring, because I have said allow phone calls. So if my sister's calling me at 3 a.m., that's a problem. All right, I want to take that phone call. There are other options. Your options are for everyone, no one, favorites, all contacts, one of your contact groups. If you've set up a group of family, you can put that in. There's all kinds of options. I just make it my favorites list. I am still in the do not disturb settings, and look at the repeated calls. A second call from the same person within 3 minutes will not be silenced. I've turned that on. So if people know this, if they've got an Apple phone, they know that you are not going to answer a call at 1 a.m., but they desperately want to talk to you. They call you, they hang up, they call you back. If you have set this on, the call will go through. If you have not turned this on, the call will not go through. Now, when you're in the car, your phone knows when you're in a car. It knows you can't walk at 65 miles an hour. And so if you want, you can set it so a phone will not ring when you're in the car. I don't use that, but I have it set so I can turn it on manually. But if you are concerned about that, and a lot of parents require their kids to do that, so the phone will not go on in the car. And when you turn that on, then you'll get a option to reply to, and I'm driving with do not disturb on. So it'll let certain people know. And you can make this everybody, it's same options as we had back in allow calls from. Okay, now, when you get a phone call, and it's from someone you know, and someone you want in your contact list, it could be that they called you from work and they never called you from work before. Could be they got a new phone. Who knows the reason they called. But you do know this person and you want to put them in the contact list. When you get that phone call, it shows the number. All right, so this is this number down here, and I pressed on the I, and it brought me to the contact list, and I can now create a contact. I blocked the caller is what we did before, but this one is create a new contact. And then I can go in and put the information. In this case, it is the IT's help desk. And I put in the information. This is an area for company, and that's the phone number. And so now when it calls up, when they return my call, it'll say Titan Tech CSUF. Okay, so this is how you add them. And it can also ask you if you want to put this into an existing contact, which is probably going to be fairly common when you get another call from the same person but from their home number instead of their cell number. By the way, you do know that when you're scrolling down on the screen, you want to go to the top, you touch the top of the screen, it goes to the top. Same thing works on your on Safari. What?
I do that accidentally all the time.
Yeah. Okay, so now I can take any of these phone calls and add them. I'm going to add that, and it gives me an option of creating a new one or add to existing. I'm going to add to existing, and I'm just going to pick one. And now, when I picked it, here's that phone number. And so that's now added to that person. So it's a really quick process. So you can add to existing or create new contact for anything. So if you have anything with a phone number instead of a name, then you can add it to an existing or to a new contact. And the more you do this, the easier it is for you to recognize who's called you.
You won't know if it's from a landline or a
No.
cell phone. though.
Well, when you add it, if you have that phone number and it is not an Apple, it will not allow you to do a FaceTime call to them. But if it's, well, actually, if it's a landline, I don't think it'll show you're able to message it. Let's see if I can find if that's true or not. We'll go to, so no, I can't. It is showing that I can FaceTime and call the person because that is an Apple, but these are not. So no, it's really not too visible, except if you try to make a FaceTime call to a landline, it won't work. So try to keep up your maintenance on that because it'll make it very easy to recognize who calls you. There's a lot more pressure when the phone is, you look down and there's a number and you're in a room and you don't know, you're going to make a decision. But if the person's name there, you know better whether to answer it or just press the button twice. Okay, so FaceTime. All right, we're going to play with some FaceTime calls. I'm going to put my phone on, after I make the call, I'm going to put the call on mute so that we don't get feedback. Because if you get two phones on FaceTime in the same room, the speaker and the microphones are fighting with each other and it sounds awful. You get terrible feedback. Okay, so you can call from the app, you can call from contacts. I have a choice of making a FaceTime. I'll say FaceTime. This is calling Ari. Hopefully Ari will. Okay, you're also on mute?
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking back and forth, but not working, but that's okay. And so let's see your face a bit better than that. Pick it, put the phone a little higher. There you go. Okay. Now I can use front camera or I can use the rear camera. And so we can, Ari is seeing Ari. It's pretty simple. I don't actually know how to make another conversation with Ari.
Add person.
Add a person, there it is. Add a person, you can add 32. And it stacks them up and you can tap from one to the other and get people. We're not going to do that kind of stuff, but that capability is there, yes. If you're not presentable, don't answer or make the phone call. You cannot convert it into an audio once you make it. You can make an audio FaceTime call, but the decision is made before. So if we end this call, we'll go to FaceTime app. And I want to make Ari. And audio. Now, that's an audio call. You can reject, thank you. You can reject the call and text and say make it audio. But once you have answered the call, you better have your hand in front of the camera or be presentable. FaceTime calls are really convenient when you're traveling. If you are in Europe and your plan is a very limited amount of data, because this is going through the internet, this is not a phone call. But you go to the Wi-Fi in the hotel, you can make a FaceTime call to any of your friends or anybody that has an Apple device. So people do FaceTime a lot. They don't need to make a phone call from Europe, which costs them more money or may cost them more money. You can use FaceTime, but do it in a Wi-Fi situation. You can make a FaceTime call through carrier data, but you're using carrier data, and that usually has a limitation, depending on your plan. Yeah, question?
When you're doing FaceTime and you can add a call, does that mean you can talk with all of your kids
32 of you at once.
and they'll all come up?
Yes.
They'll just be in different corners.
They'll stack in here, and you tap on one of them, and they'll be bigger. If you just get one or two, they'll fill the screen. If you get 32 of them, you won't be able to see all of them, but if you tap on them, you'll be able to see.
Two or three could all be talking together.
Yeah, all 32 can be talking. And when someone starts talking, it knows who that is, and that person comes up to the top of the list. So the people talking, you'll be able to see. If they're all talking at once, I have no idea what's going to happen. Except they do not understand anything, I'm sure of that. Yes, if you have a big family in Europe and you call them all, that may be quite an adventure. When you get the call, I didn't have Ari call me, so you didn't see what Ari saw. Let's show you. It looks just like if you received a phone call, but it says, would like FaceTime. And then you've got the accept or decline. This is where you're not presentable, you press decline. Or you can message them and tell them, if you send me a FaceTime audio message, I'll answer. Particularly good when traveling. And Don Lake, another OLLI member, has a brother and his family living in Italy, and they FaceTime every week. And sometimes it's just one of them, sometimes the whole family. So he uses it a lot. It's just whatever. My kids don't like FaceTime, so I don't FaceTime them. I make an audio call, just a regular phone call. My kids are in between. They're not the younger, they're one's late millennial and one is just a little beyond that. And so they're on an in-between stage where they didn't accept the stuff from the younger kids, and nor are they like me. So they're kind of in between. They don't like FaceTime. You do whatever your kids or grandkids want, because you can't make them do what they don't want. It just doesn't work. Okay, thank you so much.